what I want to do is I want to end my career with giving people every last drop of archery knowledge that I have in my system and letting the industry have it and run with it and hopefully make a better place out of it. When I decide to mic drop and vanish. Um, I guess, on the good side, or I guess on things that, I feel like are successes, the biggest thing that I feel like I'm most proud of is um is just my integrity.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Redbeard Outdoors Podcast. I'm Jonathan, your host. And today we have that special guest, John Dudley. Repeat guest. He came on last year. We had more to talk about, and we have even more to talk about. So hopefully we'll be able to do this again next year in between the end of tax season and the beginning of archery season, because Dudley goes and disappears for months on end in the fall, gets his recharge by going out and doing what he loves the best, archery hunting in so many different areas and so many different species. So definitely stay tuned for this episode. He does an amazing job articulating so many things, from how he has stayed fit, why he enjoys fitness at this point in his life, so that he can continue to enjoy the archery world as long as possible, with so many shoulder surgeries and injuries and many other things, and how he's been able to maintain and even lose weight and get more fit as he's gotten older as well. So definitely stay tuned for that. I'm really excited. Before we get into this episode, though, guys, I do want to remind you of a couple things. First and foremost, if you like this episode, if you like this podcast, and you're listening to this on YouTube, go and subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate it. Drop a comment. Any questions that may come up while you're watching this episode, leave them down below. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave a review. Helps way more than you know. And it is a free way for you to support the channel. Definitely appreciate that. And of course, sharing it whenever you feel the urge to share bits of information that you've learned from the podcast with other people also continues to help this channel grow. Last but not least, guys, we're going to get into today with John Dudley, his Broadhead that he came out with, G5, the T2s. They're pretty awesome, honestly. I've looked at them. They're super sharp. Some of the things that he's put them through and other people have used this hunting season already, it's been quite fantastic, the results that they're getting. So definitely stay tuned to hear more about how they came up with the T2 Broadhead, what's different about this other than other two blades out there. And of course, if you want to support the channel, guys, these just dropped, the new hoodies. These are the lightweight camo hoodies from First Form Outdoors, along with two other base layers that came out as well. Definitely go check them out over on First Form if you're looking to support First Form, what we're doing over there at First Form Outdoors and the channel here. Use the link down below. Get free shipping on your entire lifetime with First Form on anything over $75. And if you're listening to this while we still have some cans available, the camo cans for the energy drink, limited run, go check them out, guys. With that being said, let's get into this episode with John Dudley and Nock On Archery. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Redbeard Outdoors Podcast. I'm Jonathan, your host, and we've got John Dudley here on the podcast. You guys probably know who John is. If you don't, you're probably not shooting a bow. If you do shoot a bow, though, you probably know of Nock On TV, Nock On Nation, and Nock On Archery. And of course, John and his wife are behind that. And John just does an amazing job of sharing a lot of free information out there and trying to help people have the best experience possible when they go out into the woods, mainly hunting. Obviously, you have a target background as well, but you do like to make sure that people have the best experience while they're in the woods, whether that be for the weekend warrior or people that can take a little bit more time off and enjoy hunting to the fullest. And so we're going to dive into some of that today, but also the fact that, I just, every time I see John lately, he seems like he doesn't age. If anything, he gets more jacked. So we're going to hit on kind of what he does as he's, obviously trying to dial things in, getting ready to go on hunts. You travel the world going on hunts and just kind of sharing that knowledge as well. So I guess for the people out there that don't know who you are, John, who are you?
I'm Graybeard. This is the Red Beard and Graybeard show.
Love
Yeah.
it.
I don't know. I'm a tall, smiley guy that loves archery and loves bow hunting even more. And honestly, just no matter how many times I've thought about pulling back, it just something happens that reminds me that, this really wasn't my choice. I feel like this is just, a talent that I was gifted with, and it's a shame to not maximize it. So that's just what I'm trying to do, is trying to just give back as much as I can. And I learn every day too. And if I learn something new, the first person that's going to know about it is you guys. So I mean, that's what drives me.
I love it. I love it. And then, recently, so John, obviously you've got decades of archery experience. Again, you've been target archery, field archery, and hunting for all of that time. Uh, and we're not going to dive into a ton of the history, guys. I recommend you go and check out John's podcast over there. It's the Nock On podcast. He goes into detail about his history, how he literally, when he quit a job, was traveling, selling DVDs in the back of his Tacoma, which I every time you say Tacoma, I'm like, how did he even fit in a Tacoma? Because I feel like a Tacoma is kind of small for me, and you're like twice the size I am, vertically. So you must have the seat slid all the way back and reclined to be able to fit in there. But you know, John's been doing it for a long time, and then recently, he made a transition to a bow company that you initially had started with when you were getting into working in the industry, but you shot over, was it 5,000 arrows in 30 days?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I'm
So
I'm I'm working on doing it again for August. I'll probably get cut short with season, but yeah, you were talking about my that that is that is a pulling vein. That is from this, just
yeah.
nonstop. And, even, my hands just starting to, get blistered up where I'm shooting a lot. But this was, this was actually a year that I was really looking forward to. I try to have short-term goals and I try to have long-term goals. Normally my partnerships with people are normally at least 5-year deals. Just because I always try to map out a plan, and within that plan is the most important part of the plan is what are we bringing forward to our community, and at one time we referred to the whole community as the Nock On Nation. Now it's honestly, I feel like all that, I feel like we're all an archery organization now. I feel like we're all an archery community. I think social media has pulled a lot of us together to where there's so much crossover. There's not like, it's not like you have to rely on this company marketing you heavily so this demographic sees you. I feel like we're being seen. So when I try to make plans for myself and what my time is going to entail, um, I really want a long-term plan, and within that, I want 5 short-term plans. And honestly, I had that multiple times at Hoyt. I actually had, um, well, I think I had two or three 3 year. I think I had a 2-year deal, 3-year deal, 3-year deal, 5-year, something like that. So I ended up at Hoyt, I think, for like 13 years, which I loved. And that was after being at Matthews for 10 and working there, or 9. But since I left and went to PSE, I really had a plan there to just bring forward our own bows to the market. And there's certainly been a lot of times where I've debated just doing my own. But to be honest with you, if I go into manufacturing, it means the thing that's going to suck is the education is going to pay a price because it's just time. So the PSC thing just offered me the ability to go build bows. I had ideas that were in my mind. And to be honest with you, when I first started talking to them in August, and Hoyt knew my contract was going to expire, they knew I was a free agent. I was really talking to everybody, which I always do. I just think's fair. I mean, the industry changes. Um, but once I knew that I was going to PSE and I was going to be doing bows, which honestly, Hoyt just knew that wasn't in their cards at the time. So they're just like, listen, if that flops, you're always welcome back here. Like, we don't want to see you go, but we know this is a passion project. We know that this is an amazing opportunity for your brand, and your brand recognition. So I really did that to try to bring forth bow models that I had been thinking about for a long time. And it was also a very big challenge. PSE, I think when I went there, maybe had 60,000 followers. They're 3, 4 times that now. Sales, totally different change. Pete was in his 80s, really needed to focus on finding a buyer for the company. And about a year, 14 months ago or something, the company was acquired by a new ownership. And to be honest with you, just the new ownership and the new direction and things just didn't align with, not necessarily with me, but what I wanted to do for the community. And I think for those of you who've been to the TAC events and you see the experience that we put on for people there, um, for the major bow company to be not present was not good. Just it wasn't good. I needed that support, and I want engineers at those events. I want bows there and the ability to shoot, the ability for free coaching, and the ability to train right there. Those are all things that Hoyt 100% said, yeah, you just tell us what you want and it's going to happen. So, um, you know, every year or every 5 years, really, it's just a strategy. And right now, I really don't want to focus on building bows. Hoyt has an amazing engineering team, and I know all those guys. I work really well with every single top membership or top leadership or executive leader there. I've got great relationships with all of them. So, actually, a foot that way is the new Hoyt for 2025 or one of them. But I'm already on like Gen 2 of those with the engineering team, and I'm giving my feedback, and the bow that comes forward is going to be a bow that I've got feedback in, but it's a group effort and it's a team effort, and that team is better than me. Sometimes they might just need to be pointed in a direction if I have an idea. I'm a concept person, and I'm a branding person, so that's what I loved when I took that challenge at PSE, was to build a brand that I think was really important, that it stayed in the hunting community, and I wanted to get it to the point where it sold, moved on, stayed alive. That happened, and now I'm coming back home, and I'm going to come home to where I don't have to ask for tools of how to educate or how to provide a better platform for consumers to do better in archery. All I have to do is say what I need and I'll get what I need. So that's where I'm at. And yeah, it's a breath of fresh air, honestly, to not be swimming against the current on some of this stuff.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Now I'm gonna have to pause this. I really wanted to get into this, so give me 1 second here. My microphone's acting up. We're gonna get right back into this. All right, sorry about that, guys. Technical difficulties on my end. Let's see here.
You
Okay,
need this $99
so
headset.
yeah, that's exactly what needs to happen.
Yeah.
Uh, so, so again, I love the way, and I think I mentioned this before we started recording the podcast. I love the way that you explained it in your podcast. So again, I'm going to refer people over to that if you want to go more in depth as to why the switch, and I think you did a great job of putting it into kind of a synopsis just now. Building companies and being able to provide the content and education to the people that are out there listening to you. You obviously have built quite the following internationally, along with here in the U.S. And being able to have the tools available to you so that you can go and provide the education that you want to go and be able to, for some odd reason, shoot 5,000 arrows, which now, look, guys, I mean, you look at his biceps, you're going to understand why 5,000 arrows in a month is a goal now. So maybe now you're going to see more people doing that crap,
Yeah.
but you got to have a nice archery range in your backyard and a Traeger sitting there cooking your food for you while you're while you're doing the shooting. But in all reality, it's an amazing opportunity for providing that education to people that you have with such a platform like you do. And I love seeing just at TAC Utah, you were taking bows from whether it be Elite and Bowtech and PSE and all of that over to the Hoyt booth and getting people set up and taken care of. You basically, I mean, were just taking over the tools and using them to help the people. You weren't trying to necessarily sell people a particular bow. You wanted them to learn and have the best experience that they could at TAC, which is why people should go to TAC, and then hopefully carry that into the field when they go hunting, whatever tag it is that they have, from whitetail to out west, to maybe even a once in a lifetime tag. And so it was just cool to see that and how engaged you were. You weren't just saying, "Oh yeah, go over to the Hoyt booth, they'll take care of you." Like, you were literally walking people over across vendor village to go and make sure that they were taken care of. And I think that speaks volumes to the passion that you have, because again, you've been doing this for a long time and you're not burnt out and helping people. Other
Yeah.
things.
Honestly, the people are what gives me fuel. That stuff's easy. It's harder when I get roped into a Zoom call where people are talking strategy and then someone's like, hey Dud, we're going to do a storyboard and do this, and I'm just sitting there like, shoot me in the face. How about just give me a topic about archery and let me talk about it? Give me a person that needs help, and there is so much content right there, and honestly, I don't go to TAC for ourselves. And the hard truth is there's not a lot of ambassadors out there that are there for you all. I see it. And honestly, some of the ones where I've just like kind of brushed off are ones where over time trying to, align with them, I realize they're not here for anyone but themselves. They're not here for the sport. They're here for themselves. And if they can benefit from it, if their booth's making money, if they can go on the range and build content only for themselves, that's what they're there for, which is cool. I get it. And a lot of people are trying to make a living doing this. Luckily, I got in the industry at 19, when I went to work for Matthews, and I've been very fortunate and I've worked very hard, but I can tell you that none of my decisions right now are based on the fact that I have to have money, and what my decision is based on money. My decision, just like even with G5, I'm like, I have a passion project. I want to make a 2-blade expandable. I want to make it with someone that can machine here in the US. I want to make it with someone who I know their blade quality is awesome, and really good people. And so I went to Grace and literally said, "Hey guys, I would love to do a collaboration. I'm going to do my own head. I would love for you to do it. This is the idea I have. How can your expertise help my expertise, and vice versa?" And so that became a perfect alliance and a perfect partnership, and a really good product came out of that. And that's really what I want. I just want to pick people to where I can follow a passion project. And honestly, even, this Origin shirt, I'm finally able to align with Jocko, who's one of my best friends, and, his wife is my wife's best friend, and get like a clean slate. I'm going to come into Origin as a consumer. Honestly, my hunt gear shows up, I think today or tomorrow, the bulk of it. So I'm going to wear it as a consumer. I'm going to be fully transparent to everyone out there and be like, hey, I love this, I don't like that. And you're going to be able to see next year at the tax, we'll be able to bring prototype 1, let people see it, let people vote. Hey, do you like this zipper placement or this pocket placement, or do you like this new Pantone color of the pattern, or do you like this? Hey, what do you like this new material? Do you think it should have a face mask built in? whatever it is. And by the next tack, people can see that come to life. So, I'm getting 2 years ago, or I guess, yeah, 2 years ago, and then for the 4.5 previous to that, I had clean slates on bows, which was cool. And then, honestly, during that time, we did our own quiver. But then last year, my focus was that T2 head. That was like probably 16 to 18 months in the working, and it's out right now. So I'm excited people are finally going to have it in the field for the first time. But then, honestly, these next passion projects are going to be, this Made in America, hunting line is going to be really fun to do. Um, Honestly, I'm going to be able to have Origin and Jocko fuel in the Nock On camp at tax, and we're going to be able to provide an ecosystem for people to come in, ask questions, and if they need help or want to know the why on a clothing product, you know 10 feet this way, here, let me introduce you to Phil and Dennis. These guys will freaking dial you right in. Oh, you're wondering what the difference is in feel between this bow and this bow. Hey, come over here. I got, let me introduce you to Evan Williams and Tom Driffle and do that. Or, if people want to know why I like an Axis arrow, I can take them right over to Easton. So I'm trying to build an ecosystem for people to feel comfortable getting good information and getting products that they can rely on, because on the downside right now to the ability to just upload is there's times where you get great information, and there's times where you get I don't know, you get information with an agenda behind it.
Mhm.
And certainly I talk about this bow is awesome by this bow. I talk about this broadhead's awesome by this broadhead too. But I can tell you, this is something that I've been part of from the start to the finish. And honestly, by the time this podcast comes out, my whole thing is transparency. That's why I told everyone out there exactly what was happening when my contract expired on June 30th. People were in shock. I didn't realize the industry was gonna go crazy, and my phone just blowing up. Everybody wanting to know what the heck's going on. I'm just trying to be transparent with everybody. And one of the things that I did recently, which I did this with PSE when I first went, I went behind the scenes and did a really in-depth behind the scenes tour for people to see the what's and the whys. And with all of my models, I showed people Gen 1, hey, here's a drawing on a chalkboard. Here's what I did here. Here's what I did here. Here's where we ended up. I did a really cool series at Grace. I went out to G5 and honestly just like dove in there, and they gave me a look at durability test, sharpness test, the deployment test, the installation test, the straightness test, the machining of everything of the ferrules, even machining their own screws so that the blades can actually slide and deploy better than a screw you would just buy on Amazon or whatever. That's what I want. I want people to know the why, but I also want them to just be able to, like, open the curtain and have a microscope into those types of things that I like and that I see. And last year during this time, I think we did a podcast mainly because I went on a bit of a rant about the truth about arrows, because I was just getting so tired of people buying these arrows that are on the market, based on the fact that they didn't think that average arrows you can go to any store and buy were going to be good enough. And the truth is 100% they are. And even right helical and left helical, it's like people spend so much time wanting to know which way their arrows clock. Well, if you've wasted a day learning that, I can't tell the difference downrange. I showed people that. I'm like, I shot a big ass wad down there, and then when I took the camera in, I'm like, look, there's right helicals, there's left helicals. you know don't waste time doing all this stuff when you need to just practice with your bow, because when you can execute a good shot, then that stuff, that stuff repeats itself. We're the ones that aren't repeatable. We're not repeatable. And sure, we want to build forgiveness into a setup. Um, but we also need to, we need to know that when we're doing tests that we're comparing apples to apples, we're comparing oranges to oranges, and honestly, the medium, needs to be consistent, which right now I'm shooting enough to where I just started a series this week called Ready in 7. It's got 2 parts each day. One will be equipment based, one will be um, shooting technique or a practice routine based. But I'm doing this stuff without cuts. I hope everyone out there appreciates that. I'm filming myself live, no cuts. I want you to know how I'm shooting, and there's no smoke and mirrors. Like, this is
Mhm.
how I'm shooting every single time. I'm showing you the drills. I'm showing you like where my arrows are impacting, and the reality is there's a lot of people doing that same thing, but um, it comes with a plug, or sometimes it comes with smoke and mirrors. But
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. And all these projects, which by the way, I'm excited. Eventually, I'm gonna get my hands on some of these T2 when they're in
I'll send
stock.
you some. I'll send you
Well,
some today.
I've got the. I wanted to ask, is there a practice head for them, or do you just shoot them straight into the foam?
Honestly, I just got a text. We were gonna build a practice head specific for the T2.
Hmm.
Here's what's crazy. There was actually, I think that I forget how many there was, but there was quite a lot of patents around a rage. And honestly, I shot tripans for years, loved tripans. I honestly started to, I didn't like the rattling, and I didn't like the consistency. Once they were being made in multiple factories, you could tell there were some differences about them compared to the originals. And there was a lot of the things I didn't like about them. I didn't like the blade tightness. I honestly didn't like that collar, the original collar. Even though they deployed amazing, it's like you pop it one time, you got to remove a collar. That was a pain in the ass. The collars were offset incorrectly at one time. Then the no collar one, the blade thickness is a little bit different. They changed a little bit. I liked that system, but I also felt like we could make it better, and I thought we could make it here in America, which is honestly what we did with the T2s. Um, but those things, those broadheads, honestly had insane patents around the rages. They actually patented not being able to do a practice head with, yeah.
What the heck?
One of the patents is not being able to include a practice head,
Wow.
because they had practice heads in their pack. So, I was trying to figure out the workaround. I'm like, can we do a mail in for a free practice? Like, if you can't include it,
Yeah.
what can we do as the workaround? Um, what I do know is, and honestly, we had a few people right away reach out who I want to do a podcast with personally. These are consumers that are part of Broadhead groups,
Mhm.
and they called and they're like, dude, honestly, one of them had ordered like 18 packs or something, and they flagged me and they're like, hey, this dude ordered 18 packs, and he kind of sent in an email. One of the packs, honestly, one of the packs had a head, full disclosure and transparency, one of the packs had a head that had a slight wobble to it. He pointed it out. So my team let me know. I called him. I called him with G5, and I'm like, "Hey dude, can you send this back?" And he sent it back, and they have a huge machine that tests this, which was really really important. And in that video, I actually show that test for the straightness. But we were able to like make a few little tooling changes, and it was something that was caused from a tool that had worn.
Mhm.
So now the protocol is in place for that check, to be happening standardly. But I totally valued that opinion. But after I said, he's like, "Hey man, I've had all these packs. I've had one that did that, and I was like, okay, cool, we got that back. But I said, other than that, how is it? And he's like, these things are insane how they fly. They fly so good. You can shoot them into any type of layered foam, and the blades will reverse when you pull it out. You know, they're not like barbed or anything by law, but they'll reverse and you can pull it out. I'm gonna try their BMP. I haven't personally used the BMP that they have now, which was kind of more made for the dead meats. The profile to it was more for the dead meats. I haven't personally shot that just because honestly, I shot mine at like 20 yards and then I shot again at 100 yards and they were flying so freaking good that I'm like, why am I out here really doing this, you know?
Exactly.
And that's one of the things that I wanted to do here right prior to season is I want to show people, I want to do a video showing people the flight test and how it actually shoots live field point versus broadhead. Um, and I didn't really want to do that until I was at the stage that technically I'll be at like Thursday or Friday with this series, which will then be quivers on bows, lighted nocks on arrows, and we're literally in full hunt mode. Our sight tapes are done and we can just check that. But they freaking fly like darts. And honestly, I just had Dr. Peter Attia, who was on one of my podcasts last year when I did that Truth About Arrows series. He actually, I sent him some T2s because he's in Hawaii right now, shooting a bunch of axis, and he sent me this video. You know, they actually shot a really big hog, and then they wanted to, check for accuracy. So they shot this thing 4 times with the same head. Once it was bedded, they put it in a bedded position so its shoulders are like back and they're shooting it literally through arms that are pinned back. And it's like just poking out the other side, which, he's a 29-inch draw, 70 pounds, shooting a kind of a moderate weight arrow, not amazing, but he's like both shoulder blades. And honestly, they put a little vein right where he needed to aim, cut the vein in half going in, and then that thing was lodged in the other shoulder. They were reefing it out for a while. I want to show it, but like I'm kind of worried about what image it shows when you're shooting like a dead animal there. Trying these things. It's a valuable test, but it's also I have to weigh the scales of what are non-hunters going to see if that's all they see type thing, so I'm trying to weigh that out. But the beauty of it was they shot this thing 3 times, and I'll just play this video for you here. So they shot the head 3 times. This is like the third time. So that was 53 yards.
Wow. So it's flying right at
2 inches off at 50.
That's human error, though. I mean, that's not necessarily the broadhead.
Yeah, it could be. And so you can see it's completely in the socket of the other side, right? So they get this thing out, and
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I mean it's still fully closed. So that's the kind of testing that I'm looking forward to from other people. So yeah, that project was super fun. I was super passionate about it, but we can't include a practice head. I'm sorry, but we're working on that.
So the reason I ask is because so Brian actually sent some mega meats out.
Okay.
And then he said when the T2s get back in stock, he'll send some out. But I took them over. So I work with Wild Arrow.
Yep.
They're 10 minutes north of me. They're amazing people, and they really like the mega meats and the dead meats, depending on the animal. And so they epoxied. So Mark up there, actually came out to the practice range with me and epoxied one of them shut
Mm-hmm.
to use as a practice head, because even the BMP, it's good, but it's still not the exact same profile as the mega
Yeah.
meat or the dead meat. And
Yep.
we like to practice with our broadheads.
Yep.
And so that's why I asked, like, if there's a way to lock it down or anything like that. And so, once I get out, I'll probably do the same thing, is just epoxy one of them shut,
Yeah.
just to use that. And that is an option. Obviously, it takes a little bit longer. You can't just super glue it and then hope it doesn't break when but
Yeah,
it works.
let me grab some here. I want to show you something quick. So
Okay, cool.
1 second, but you can tell people what you like about that one. I'll be right back.
Yeah. So I'll fill in the blank here. So while he's off grabbing stuff. So guys, the T2, if you don't know, it's a 2-blade mechanical head made by G5, as you guys know, and this will be coming out probably post hunt season. But I'm going to have a bunch of broadheads that I'm taking out to multiple whitetail hunts this year, and the
Broadhead
T2
tray of death
will be
right
there.
there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
The
I can't
how
tip
many
it. I
renditions
can't
did
tip
you
it
guys
up,
go
but
through?
what? Oh,
How
well,
many?
this is just stuff that I've been playing with in the last
Oh, okay.
week.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is stuff I've been playing with in the last
Yeah.
week. So that's your, BMPs right there.
Mhm.
Um, So here's something to think about, and I honestly, I love the fact that the mega meats. There's tons of mega meat lovers out there, and I shot these for a while too. And honestly, I love that the bone collector guys are behind this, because I actually, I was talking to Brian and the Graces, and I just said, this needs to be taste great, less filling campaign, because we can argue these two things out quite a bit, but I'm going to give you a few things to think about. Certainly, devastation, trauma equals death. I mean,
Mhm.
that's how it works. Trauma equals stuff going down. So, small cuts, sure, more penetration, maybe a double pass through, and certainly you got 2 holes, not one, if you want to argue that. But the reality is, I need 18 inches to fully utilize that product, yes or no? I mean,
Mhm.
that's the truth. And I've seen a lot of stuff get shot, and I've done 10 times the tracking of other people's animals, let alone mine. So, a couple things to think about. For a 3-blade, obviously bigger hole. You got a bigger hole. If you only have one hole, could be more blood on the ground. Um, However, you now have 30% more drag going through. You have one more object cutting. So instead of 2 doing 50-50, you have 3 doing 33.3 repeating. So a few things to think about with that is you've got 33 percent more surface area that you've got to force through. And the way I look at it is, if I have a cut on impact head, whether it's, one of these, honestly, you can't not talk about Iron Will, just because, these are, a great product, solid product. I like Bill. He's a nice guy. Makes a good product. And, I actually shot these twice last year. Um, but I did go back to a bigger cut, because couple things to think about. One, if you shot this through an animal, if anyone shot that through an animal and it did not open, would they be upset?
No.
They wouldn't be upset. Most people would be pissed if you shot
Well,
that and
I'm
it
okay.
didn't
I'm gonna
and
say
it
most
didn't
people wouldn't,
deploy. Yeah, if
but
this did
yeah.
not deploy, people would be like, "I used your mechanical, it didn't open." The hard thing is, and whether it's this one, I mean, you look at the actual cutting diameter, it's, even if it didn't open, it's so close, right? It's so close to what a lot of the fixed blade heads
Well,
are
and that's
anyway,
why I
right?
said that, because that particular head, some mechanical heads I'd be upset about, but like that one, and then I use Evolution. It's
Yep.
a hybrid head, and so that's why I use that one, because I'm like, even if, say, heaven forbid, it doesn't open, it's
Yeah.
still gonna have a little bit over an inch cut, which is
Yeah.
bigger
I
than most
mean,
fixed heads.
yeah, there's some. I mean, I shot one of the solid tooth of the arrows for a moose because it's, it looked like it's going to penetrate, it's going to zip
Yeah,
through,
it's a
but
dart.
it's also about that big for cutting diameter, and that's about it. So, a couple things to think about. If you watch the video that'll be on my page, the tour of the G5 factory, and I'll also break these videos into segments, but there'll be one that tests the deployment. Now, these are a little bit, and actually this is a prototype one, but these are a little bit interesting in how they work because the retention is actually at the very front of the ferrule. So they actually deploy a lot better when they enter than when you're when both of them are closed, and people are like pulling on them back here. This is the safest way to open one up so you can check and see. But what's really nice about these things is they really look for an exact poundage for deployment. And with the two blade, once one blade is deployed, the other one only needs about half or less than half of that to deploy the other side. So on these two blades, once one blade is moving, the other blade, which you'll be able to tell if you've got one open, this one goes open really easy. Now, on this one, every single one of these collars has to have the max pressure to deploy. So every single one has to have the exact, I don't want to push on that thing because your finger's going to fall off if you do. But every single one has to have that same amount of pressure to deploy. So, you've got to have whatever it is, I forget what it is, 6 pounds here, 6 pounds here, 6 pounds here, for that thing to deploy, whereas, so you're looking at, I don't know if it's 6 pounds. I'll have to double check that, but let's just use 6. So you got 3 times 6 is 18 versus, 6 for the one side to open, and then the other side's going to open with half that. So now you've only got 9 total versus 18.
Right.
So, you kind of have to look at it that way too. But if you want more devastation, which a lot of people do want more devastation, then yeah, that sucker right there is going to rip some mean freaking holes through stuff. No question about it. I just like simplicity of 2 blades. I feel like, for example, where I'm going hunting this next, like one of my first hunts is always Alberta, and you're hunting in thick foliage, leaves are on, a lot of the elk shots are very tight, a lot of the undergrowth is like head high, so you're trying to pick these little lanes in the willows, or you're
head high for you is gonna be like way over my head. I'm gonna have
yeah,
to like get a telescope to look
yeah,
at it.
my head's usually above it, but the bodies are like right there. But in canola as well, all you have to do is hit one little stick or one bean pod, and either your broadhead's going to start deploying or you start having deviation. So just more surface area for that, to me, means I'm more likely to nick one of those things. So the smaller I am, and if the point is making it through some of that and the back of it kind of nicks something, that's okay. But I really want my head fully contained within the radius of my fletching. So I've always just loved the 2 blade just because I know, if I'm going to compare, well, especially, I guess the best thing is if you compared a 2 blade to a 2 blade, if I had a 2 blade fixed and a 2 blade mechanical, from a penetration point of view, a 2 blade fix is going to be higher on that scale. Whereas, if all of a sudden you start to factor in devastation, this thing's got to creep up. It's not going to match penetration, but let's say it's here. So now the question is, okay, if my scale is barely tipped, but I'm doubling my damage, what's better. And especially when we're talking, the cavity of an elk is, as wide as my shoulders. So if you're worried about going through all the way to the other side, listen, the damage is done. If you do 18 times 2, 36 inches of severed trauma is freaking devastating to any type of animal. 1 inch times 18. I mean, especially last year, honestly, last year there was, it was a very wet spring in a lot of or wet spring and summer, a lot of the places I was at. A lot of the animals were very, very healthy. They already had that internal blubber in there. When you cut open, their main cavities, you could see all the, kind of that loose fat that they had already built up. They weren't really stressed out, and the winters were pretty mild for some places, and just the amount of arrow holes that just immediately plugged up from this small hole and a little bit of blubber,
Yep.
that's problematic. You double that entrance hole and you still have the ability for something to escape. So it's a endless argument, but I base it on people that I know that are straight up killing people. And honestly, I had a podcast that released yesterday with Nick Munt. He's very mega meat. He loves that big devastation. He's not like it pass throughs don't mean crap to him versus pileups. And I prefer pileups over pass throughs. And that's what I get when I freaking send a tomahawk into something.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I couldn't agree with you more. It's funny because I've actually got some questions from the audience that I was going to ask you. And one of them was that, why are you one of the few, feels like the few, there's probably a lot of people out there that don't have presences on YouTube and Instagram or social media, but you do seem to be like one of the standalones that doesn't mind not having a complete pass through.
Yep.
There's a lot of people that really want the 2 holes, which I agree with that as well. But also, I think you answered that really well. Whoever it was that asked that question, I want them to know, like, that question was on my mind, and Dudley answered it here with just the idea of the devastation internally is more important to you than that second hole per se.
Well, here's the thing. If you hit an animal bad, what you want it to do is you want it to feel like something's not right, and you want it to stop and bed up.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you want. I mean, whether you like seeing an animal sick for a little bit if you've made a poor shot, or whether you want to be able to see that or not, like, I don't like seeing it, but I can tell you this, I want ethically to recover that animal.
Yeah.
And when something hits and it's pinned arms together and something's hobbling off, it's like every time I move, I'm hurting. And typically they'll get to where they feel like their first safety is, and they're like, okay, I got to freaking take a break, because every time I move, something is jabbing me. You zip through, hey, sometimes they don't even know they're hit. And guess what? You shoot one of the places where I've been invited to a few times, is in Utah. It's an elk mecca, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you look at a place like that where there's 20 bull hunters a week times 6 weeks, well, I don't think that, maybe there's 100 bull tags and then 600 cow tags. Those guides see more impacts in 1 year than 90% of the bow hunting population could even argue with them on what does what. And I can tell you that I was on a lot of small cut, double pass through track jobs last year where, the same thing was being said. Man, they freaking zip through, but they sure aren't putting blood on the ground. If we don't stumble across this thing, we just can't find them if the hit's far back at all.
Yep.
You jab something and you bury, a a 2-inch cut, which is actually, most of the time it cuts the width of my fingers. I can literally put my fingers in the hole. You do that, and even if it's stopped on the other side, that thing moving back and forth as they're going, they just go a little ways and they either stop and just get to the point where they bed down and fall over. And these are poor hits, which honestly, part of my equation is poor hits. I practice every day. I wanted 10,000 practice arrows before my hunting season. And the reality is animals move, you're nervous, there's wind, there's deflections, there's misranges, there's miscommunication with your buddies. There's, you think he's in one place bedded and got an absolute, your sight set, and then the thing stands back and you make your shot and you realize he was actually 3 yards further back. So, you're low. In all those situations, trauma equals a notch tag for me. And so, if they're stuck, and I call them shoulder folders. If I can pin arms together or if I can break one of the wheels, I do it. I mean, if I can take a wheel and that wheel's not working, then even if I don't have blood on the ground, now I have disturbed dirt where I can actually pursue. And so, yeah, it's not, going back to the basics of the Fitzgeralds with the old passing through VHS tapes. But, some people prefer passing through. I like piling up. So hashtag piling up.
Yeah, right. And what you should have named that broadhead is the knife hand. Just
Oh, okay. We wanted Traumahawk, but it was taken. I really wanted Traumahawk so bad, but it was taken. And yeah, that's originally what it was going to be. And then we went with the T2, which I refer to it as the Trauminator. But that's how I look at it. And I get to see a lot of stuff get hit with broadheads, and I test a lot of broadheads. And funny enough, most of the time when I shoot something and the penetration's like really poor, usually it's me trying a head on the product. I've tried a lot. I try a lot of heads each year, and there's times where people are like, "Oh man, that really sucks," and I don't want to do a call out and say, "Okay, actually that was the blah 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 2.0. It wasn't even ours." You know what I mean? And honestly, one of the ones that freaking just blew my mind one year was that toxic broadhead that they had the curled blades. It was supposed to just, they said it would knock a freaking hole through the animal like that. Not true. I shot a whitetail with that thing at 20 yards, and their whole marketing campaign was like this jug of red water. They had it at all the Shields stores, and you were just seeing this thing leaking out and everything. Well, when I shot my deer with it, that thing, it was like a perfect double lung shot. It ran out there and honestly got to the point where I just felt bad watching it like out there standing, and it had a hole through it, but no leaking. It had literally, like, when it went through, the broadhead had a bunch of meat on it. It looked like a meat tater tot that was just jammed up in all that thing, and it literally just like pushed a hole through it. It didn't sever anything to where there was a lot of bleeding, and it wasn't good. And I wanted to just, honestly, I sent the video to those guys, and I'm like, you need to redo your marketing because this was not accurate. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's hard, and until people actually see this stuff for themselves, we're never going to come to a conclusion. And there's more than one way to do it too. So, I'm going to stick with the way I like and the way I appreciate. And people like, Joel Maxfield, who I had on my podcast too. That guy hunts for a living. I mean, he just hunts everything all the time, everywhere. And he has since I met him when I was 19 or 18. And if he's like, this is a solid freaking broadhead, I'm going to be using them. I mean, I know we're I know we were on a good pace.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's the thing too, is there's so many good ones out there. I would agree with you on, you got to take into account, like, obviously you hope that it's the perfect shot, but you can't really, you can't equal your shooting in your backyard or in your Crocs or whatever, just with your hip quiver and everything else you got going on. You can't equal that to a shot out in the mountains, because there's so many factors that go into shooting on an animal, them moving, that their bone structure could be slightly different from the elk that you studied. I mean, there's so many different things that are variables, and you just have to be confident. And I think that's the biggest thing is, at least for me, when I talk to people, is like, look, there's all these options out there. What's going to give you confidence when you're at full draw that you're going to knock that animal down? Like,
Yeah.
really, what is it? Because yes, there's marketing and all of that, but you don't want to get to full draw and be like, oh man, if I use a mechanical, I might not get full pass through, and I'm worried about like everything else is already going to be going through your head. You don't need to be worried about your equipment. And so shoot your broadheads, and make sure it's something that'll penetrate. Trust people that aren't just trying to sell you stuff. And I personally, honestly, really like the hybrid or the mechanical route, just because you shoot high enough poundage, you don't hug the shoulder,
Yeah.
per se. You were good to go. I mean, I saw it. I've seen it quite a few times, with mechanical broadheads, and in my limited experience, I definitely don't have nearly the experience you do. But um, if you place that shot where you want it to go, and if you know the anatomy well enough, you'll be just fine. If not, happier that you did
Yeah.
too. So.
Yeah, and I mean, normally I have, I'll have one head in in my quiver that is like, if I need to make a long shot or a follow-up shot, am I going to make a really long shot with a mechanical? If it's elk or moose, um, I'm probably gonna shoot what I know is gonna get the penetration I need, depending on the distance. But there are people that have limitations.
Hmm.
Some people now have very short draw lengths, and maybe they've had a shoulder injury and they're limited. And yeah, 100%. Like, honestly, Sharon, Sharon has shot that head for 12 years. Her or Harry have just shot an OG Montec. We've tried other things. I've one time I think they shot trocars. I liked trocars, how they flew as well, but honestly, they started to not fly as good as some of the first ones I bought. But I just really, years ago, like, this was back when rocket arrowheads came out. um there was just times where, for whatever reason, some fixed blades just weren't shooting very good. I mean, it's like you would shoot 10 and all of a sudden you'd get one where you're like, what the hell happened with that one? You know what I mean? And it just got to the point where I'm like, I'm spending more time trying to figure this out than just having something where I know every single time they're just literally flying like a field point. And listen, we haven't even talked about mother nature. Like, what happens, I've got times where I've been antelope hunting where when that arrow comes out of the blind, it is just laid over like that. And if you've got a blade in the front too, that thing is, who knows what's going to happen. And most people aren't going to sit there and be like, okay, I have a slight tailwind with a right to left, because if you have a blade on the front, it's like a tailwind can give you lift or it can give you push. And that's true on a target, on a in the target world, where we're shooting 70 and 90 meters with a field point and ballistic arrows made for target archery. There's times where a tailwind will give you a rise, and there's times where a tailwind will give you a push, and you have to look in your spotting scope and realize, okay, the last two were 4 inches low. I need to hold top of the gold because we've got a downward push with this wind. Those things are hard enough to figure out with no blade on the front. You put a blade on the front, it's even harder. So
Yeah.
I don't know. That's where I'm at,
Well, and
and
that was one of the craziest things for me that I saw. Just I finally got a camera that I could do slow-mo, and I was shooting in a
So weird
day,
you
and I was
out.
shooting at 80 yards where I could see the crosswind. Once I got out of this kind of tunnel of buildings, there was a crosswind, and I saw my arrow do this almost 90 degrees and then correct itself and land in the target. And I was like, holy, like I've heard people talk about it, but it's cool seeing that and how the proper fletching can help recorrect that based on wind. But there's no way to calculate that. Like in my head, I'm like,
Yeah.
I just thought it was cool. I'm not going to sit there and like, all right, this 5 degrees to the right. Like I'm not going to do all that. And so,
Yeah.
but I agree, having that fixed blade on the front, that's usually what I jump to once I've tuned my bow or gotten it tuned up there at Wild Arrow and walk through that process. I'll throw a big old wide iron wheel wide and
Yeah.
go and shoot. And if I'm hitting at 80, 100 yards with that, I'm like, all right,
Yeah,
I'm
you
there.
can shoot
Like,
whatever the freak you want,
exactly,
bro.
exactly.
Yeah, you can
So
shoot whatever you want.
that's really my way of tuning. I don't go way down the rabbit hole. I don't have time for that.
I
I've
mean,
got a
that's pretty
job, I've
far
got
down.
kids.
If you've got that tune, then you need to be
Yeah.
doing my stuff. So,
No, it's not me.
hey,
uh,
so what's some other questions? Let's go through your
let's knock
list.
out some questions here. So, let's see here. We've got. All right. What? Oh, this is a good one. I might actually want to save this one for last.
Do it
Okay.
now. Do it now.
This year, which Hoyt is? Oh, okay. Which Hoyt is he running? Alpha X or RX8 or one of the new ones? Which one are you going to take on your hunts?
I'll probably take a new one. Yeah, I mean, I know I'll have a new one. I always
Yeah.
will. And funny enough, everyone's like, "Why don't you have flow green strings?" I literally got bows off shelves. I'm like, "What is available? I'll take it." So, this one I actually changed out the limbs. I went to a little bit heavier limb on this one. This one I think is around 73 or 74. So, it's an Alpha X 33. A lot of you have been seeing me shoot this one. It's a freaking tack driver, and
It's incredible.
um, I honestly liked this aluminum bow way more than I thought. And at first, I preferred this over the 8, and I
Mm,
preferred it over the 8 because of the speed. Um, I just, I'm used. The Levitate was fast. I mean, it was a fast bow. But the cams were, the cams were not as durable as a Hoyt cam. They were thinner walled. If you drop one, it's going to be bent. Um, I didn't think I would like the Alpha X33 the way I do, but this thing is a freaking tack driver. I mean, it is an awesome bow, and I love the specs of it.
mm,
Now, once I kind of got used to um, the speed, I guess, because the the RX8 Ultra does have a longer brace height. So with the longer brace height means you're going to have a difference in speed. The brace height is more generous, so there's argument there on the fact that this thing would be a little bit more forgiving. And honestly, I loved the way the cam felt um, on this particular Ultra in the slot that it was in, because what's awesome about this new cam, and I didn't really think it was that big of a deal until I used it, but being able to adjust in those quarter-inch
mhm,
increments, the 30.75, just that for me to be able to do that means I'm just at a home the whole year, because typically I would shoot a 31 all non-hunting season, and then once I have to start bulking up on clothes, I'll go to a 30 and a half. Whereas I kind of went to a 30 and 3/4 on all these, and they've been awesome right in the 30 and 3/4. Now this one is the RX8 Ultra that I'm shooting is right at 70 pounds. So
mm,
it just has a little bit less speed than the 33 did, because the 33 has more weight, and the 33 had just a shorter brace height on it as well. Now, I really wanted, this is the regular RX8, the short one. I actually wanted this to work really bad. But at my longer draw length, and I've tried to like short cable it to where I can get my draw length out of this thing, I'm just pushing it too far, and it just doesn't agree with being like overextended. I feel like if I could climb behind this in a 30-inch draw, this would be my preferred one over the Ultra. And honestly, my buddy Les Welch, I don't know if you know Les. He is a big help for us. But Les actually got an RX-8 that I built for him, and his draw length is in the shorter slot. I think he was 28 and a half, and that thing tuned and shot like a machine. So if you're a little bit shorter in the draw, I would just look at the 8 um, over the Ultra. Now, one of the things that I'll say is when I first got these, honestly, I shot them a little bit, and one of the things that I didn't really know whether or not I liked was the grip. And I actually pulled the grips off. I shot off the riser, which I used to do that a lot on my Hoyts, and then I actually made some grips that I thought were just going to be awesome. And the truth is, they weren't. On all my bows, I'm shooting the factory grips, and as much as I want to say that, they're more accurate, they are.
Yeah.
So they did a good job on the grip. I don't know if it's still 100% necessarily the feel that I like, but it doesn't matter because my lefts and rights have honestly been the best in the last 3 weeks than I've had in quite a while. Just having some randoms, and some of that could be the fact that these bows have a little bit longer brace height too. So even though there's a little bit of a speed loss, the speed loss is being, weighed out by forgivability. So that's where I'm at. That's so far, those are the main ones that I've tested.
So I wanted to ask you, bring up grips. My buddy actually makes, and I'm running his grips on both of my bows, the JQ3 grips. I believe you stopped by his booth at TAC in Utah.
Yeah.
Um,
Awesome,
how
dude.
did you what did you think about those grips? And that's my personal question.
Those are the ones I tried.
Okay, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and honestly, I love the feel of them and the forget of them and the fit of them. They were awesome, but um, in the reality is that stuff can be refined.
Hmm.
But I also took a grip off a bow that I had tuned and that was shooting really good, and I literally put a new grip on there and didn't recheck any of that. And there's a good chance that, when your hand position is moving left and right, even the littlest bit, people see what it does if you move the cams, a few thousandths here or there. So some of these grips are the same thing. So you know, I didn't go in and recalibrate when I put that grip on. I pretty much just peeled. I'm like, okay, I don't like the feel of this right now. I'm going to
Yeah.
put this on, and then I was like, oh yeah, this thing's really getting ready to shoot. And then the truth is, I ended up re-sticking all the factory grips on these 3 that I've got.
I bet that was fun. Yeah, I just asked because I didn't go through. I ripped them off when I first got my bow, so I've got it's basically a 31 inch. This thing is 30 and 3/4 inch RX8, and then
Yep.
the Alpha X33 are what I'm using this year. And I didn't even do any tuning until I had those grips on it. So I don't know if, I didn't even try it with the other ones on it. But that makes 100% sense. And that's a good point for people that are out there wanting to swap things around so much in our tinkerers like us. And you start messing with one little thing here, even weights on your stabilizers, things
Yeah.
like that. All of that can mess things up. So it's hard because you want to try all the new things and mess around with stuff and get things dialed in. But right now is not really the time to do that right before season. So
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. No
yeah.
kidding.
Cool. So let's see here. We've got um one of them said, "I want to know when the Origin rain gear is dropping." I don't think you can talk about that, so we'll leave that one out
Well,
there.
I mean, honestly, immersion camps going on right now. So I think if I text anybody, they're probably on a mat. But it's coming soon. They're trying to get all of the hunt stuff there and ready to go so that when they do a hunt drop, people aren't trying to do partitions. They can just build a set. So the best thing to do is to watch my social media and obviously Origin's social media. But yeah, it's pretty sweet that thing. That was the biggest hurdle. And honestly, when I talked to Jocko and them, I'm like, the big bugaboo is going to be you being able to fully make a real, Gore-Tex, like competitive type of product. But the truth is, there's a lot of regulations that are getting ready to take effect at the end of this year, and a lot of the Gore-Tex, as we know it, is going away because of the bonding chemical is harmful. So, there's going to be a level playing field on the products that people can put out there anyway. And Origin was like, okay, well, if this is the one thing people are saying that we can't do, let's just get this done. And I mean, it's got to be expensive, but it's proving that we don't have boundaries. We just have time restraints. And that's what's fun about it for me is, my plan is to go in there just so everyone knows this is my long-term plan is everything we need to hunt will happen by, within 3 to 5 years. Okay. The first thing is a big game set, start to finish, needs to be fully in effect, and any type of refinement to the camo pattern will also happen by 2025. This year, I'm going to get what the team's built, which they've already made improvements. I'm going to get what they built, and I'm going to use it as a consumer, and I'm going to be sticky note in that thing of, what I want and what I don't want. I mean, even honestly, one of the things was, the direction of the zipper. I'm already like, can we turn that around? Because where the end of that zipper is right where your bow has the ability to kind of, nick it and we can just reposition it and it would be changed. So I'm going to be a consumer this season, and then we're going to go into making sure we have the type of outfit that honestly I use 80% of the year, from spring turkey all the way until the end of elk season. I'm virtually in the same type of, outfit. Depending, my outer shells may change or the range shells will change, but the first layer and the insulation layer could change depending, but most of it is going to be consistent. So I want to get all those nailed for next year. And then the next big push, and maybe we can put it in the next year, is going to be a whitetail set. That is 100% a whitetail consumer is using that thing. And yeah, we're going after whitetail because that's my expertise, and we've got the ability to do it.
It's a huge market too, and especially with them being over there on the East Coast, that's
Yeah.
that's a very, very big market of people, and the vast majority of hunters, to be frank,
Yep.
they're all whitetail hunters. So awesome. Let's see here. This one's okay. Will the Hoyt carbon risers be made in the U.S. anytime soon?
Um, I don't think that part is possible because this goes back all the way until I think the very first carbon matrix. And there's technology that sometimes you make a choice on whether or not you're going to license that. And sometimes those processes have parameters on how they're made, and a lot of times the people that own the processes also own the manufacturing. So that it uses OTEC technology, which is, the technology from that carbon. It can be found in some of the highest end tennis rackets, that carbon type of construction from OTEC. And it's a Prince property. So Hoyt really feels like it's giving their engineering team the durability that they need. And listen, the reality is there's no company out there that I know of in archery that does the demolition tests and have the requirements of durability that Hoyt does. And honestly, I always loved that campaign. And I think that was so important for people to see, like the dry fire tests and stuff like that. And funny enough, I was on a podcast and talked about that, and a lot of people had forgot about it. And then Hoyt actually posted it just
Yeah.
random the other day, and I sent a message in, and I'm like, "Hey, good call on the built Hoyt tough thing." And they're like, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "I've actually been talking about this because this is one of the things I really loved about Hoyt and appreciated about Hoyt because, and I talk about when I used to compete, I always traveled with 2 bows, sometimes 3. If I was on the road for 3 full weeks to where I was going to different continents and really having to be in a lot of different elements, with my single cam bows, strings and cables would move and things would change pretty quick. So I was always used to traveling with multiple bows. But when I switched to Hoyt over time, I just realized, like, I've never opened that second case ever. That thing is just durable. It's like if you take care of strings, it's going to take care of itself. It has the most robust cam system. You don't see bearing issues with Hoyts. The only thing that honestly I've ever seen, which you're going to see this anywhere, is when you kind of chop any type of limb on a direct corner, you're going to get a D-lam there. And that's really all I've seen. Sometimes there might be an issue where people have to move spacers or washers in their cams depending on their natural grip or facial pressure position to get it set up and tuned properly. But I've just loved the durability of Hoyt, and I think that what they're doing with the carbon side, I mean, they're getting that riser made where it has to be made, and they're bringing it here to Salt Lake, and they're assembling it and building it with literally everything else right here. If people have an issue with that, which it's a hard one, because like even with Origin, obviously I love the ability to make it all here. I love that ability. The question is, Hoyt, can Hoyt do it? Could they do it? Sure. They could literally duplicate that process, license it properly, bring their machines here, do all that. But then it's like, okay, guys, here's the same exact bow and it's $3,000.
Yep.
Same bow,
Yeah.
$3,000. So, that's kind of the dilemma. And, we even have products, we have products on the Nock On side where, like with releases, I would never trust releases to be made overseas. And most of the people competing, it's like someone will come up to me with Origin, but then they'll show me an ultra view, and it's like, okay, well, here, this thing's made, you know getting these things all on a boat. So whereas Carter made right there in Idaho, there's times where if they can do it better that way, and if they can do that process better that way, then yeah, you've got to, you know you got to go with where you can build the best product. But on some categories, that's not necessarily the case. And I guess with Hoyt, the reality is I had a hard time choosing between the RX8 or the 33, and I may end up still showing up with the 33. So if that's a bugaboo for people, hey, the aluminum ones are made 100% right here. But otherwise, if you look at the carbon part, I mean, this literally just your carbon tubing is what would not be made here. So,
Yeah.
you know, it just it is what it is.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and there's definitely some things that can be made better overseas, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would agree if they brought it here, it would be a $3,000 bow. And for me personally, I do notice there's not that much of a weight difference in the aluminum and the carbon. There is a weight difference, but not a ton. And
Yeah.
I always tell people, I'm like, go shoot both of them. To me, the carbon is a little bit more smooth. I don't know how when it's the same cam system, but there's a little bit more smooth on the carbon. But outside of that, I mean, that aluminum, that 33 is the one I'm going to be hunting with this year,
Yeah.
until I go out whitetail hunting, and then I'll take the RX-8 out.
It's a
But yeah.
shooter.
Mhm.
It's all frequency. A lot of what you feel is just frequency. There's vibrations going through that system. It's like um, I've got a McPherson guitar right there that's carbon, and I've got a bunch of other guitars in here that all have different woods, and all of them sound different. All of them resonate different, and it just has to do with material and frequencies, and that's essentially what you're feeling with these. Now, when you compare one model to another model, when the specs are slightly different, you're not really comparing apples to apples because
Mhm.
they're using the same cam system, but you're going to be in a different position of the cam. So, there's definitely even the same size cam, if you're in an A versus a C, that's going to both be two very different
That's
feels.
true.
And you would feel that honestly, like, even a levitate on the A position doesn't feel great, but you go to a B and C and all of a sudden it's like, what the heck? This thing feels a million times better. And honestly, on the shortest draws of that E2 cam, they felt really good, and the speed was only 1 foot per second slower than the S2 cam, which was the short draw cam, which everyone assumed they needed to go by. That was very demanding, totally different feel for 1 foot a
Mhm.
second. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely get that. Let's see. Two more
lightning round,
questions
we
here.
better get going. I got
Yeah.
8 minutes.
Okay. Then I'm going to just do this last one. I really like it a lot. It's what is a memorable failure that you've learned from, and what is a memorable success? Now, they didn't specify hunting or anything like that. But yeah, I'll let you shoot from the hip on that one, whichever category of life you want to apply that to.
Yeah, yeah. um I don't know. That's pretty tough. I don't really I rarely ever fixate on, there I don't really have like regrets, and I think like in that original Hoyt um I Am Defiant video, I think I just, I think I said that when they're like, "What's your regrets?" And when they were kind of doing the documentary, one of the questions they fired off was, "What's one of your regrets?" And I was just like, "I don't do regrets." um,
Love it.
I feel like I guess a failure or a learning experience, and it really wasn't a failure. I definitely learned a lot when I departed Matthews. Um, I've never really gone into all that, but it was very eye opening. Um, how much you feel like you can be so dedicated and so loyal to something, and you tell people, you just pour out loyalty, pour it out, and then something happens to where maybe it has nothing to do with you, but the effect affects you, and then you have to make a personal life choice.
Hmm.
um and honestly, for me, when Matthews made the decision that they were no longer going to let employees travel, um, and I got called in with HR to tell me that, I was literally, you know, I couldn't travel to compete. They actually didn't even want me using my vacation time to compete. They pretty much said like, listen, you're one of our lead sales guys. What you're doing is gonna affect what we can enforce with everybody else. So we just want you to stop. And yeah, I mean, I stood up for what I believed, which was, I don't feel like my career and my path should be determined by people I don't know and their decisions. And honestly, Matt was like, "Are you saying you would leave me?" And I said, "Yeah, I will if that's what it means." that was like a big learning curve when all of a sudden it's like, okay, so are we separating? And I'm like, yeah, if you're telling me I can't compete and I can't,
Mm-hmm.
do what I love, and then yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out what I want to do with my life. That was a really hard one. Was when all your eggs are in one basket. Um, you really like a lot of people wouldn't have made that decision. Honestly, I felt like worst case scenario, I can just shoot professionally and like live off 25 grand or 30 grand a year and like make it work. I was like, screw it. I'm just going to hustle. I'll figure it out. I don't care what I have to do. I'll work in an archery shop or McDonald's. I don't care, but I want to have my freedom and I want to do archery the way I want to do it. So putting all my eggs in one basket, I feel like that was kind of a failure for me. And that's why right now I have a lot of great partners. MKC's one, Josh and Brandon. It's like if I call them and say, "Hey, we want to do this for our community, and I want, I'd love to have MKC as part of it." Never a question.
Mm-hmm.
Not a question. Not a question. But if some of those people have to, and honestly, like even the PSE deal, perfect example. Um, I could leave PSE, I could leave that bow company, and it wouldn't, and literally sponsorship of the bow company totally gone. I'm I'm still going to do exactly what I'm doing. It
Yep.
is, I've got a very diverse support system, and unless it just went nuclear, and then I have the ability to fight for or to say yes and no, which I do a lot. I say no way more than I say yes because I want to be able to say yes to what keeps me on the path of what we want to do, and what I want to do is I want to end my career with giving people every last drop of archery knowledge that I have in my system and letting the industry have it and run with it and hopefully make a better place out of it. When I decide to mic drop and vanish. Um, I guess, on the good side, or I guess on things that, I feel like are successes, the biggest thing that I feel like I'm most proud of is um is just my integrity. I've been very transparent with the industry. I've been transparent with partners. And I just feel like I'm most proud of the people that are part of, whatever Nock On's doing, those people and partners and the friendships that I have there, and the people that just, if I'm like, hey man, I can't do that, sorry, I'm doing this, they're just like, yeah, well, honestly, do you need help? The support network and the friend network that we've built around Nock On and the community of people that are there with Nock On is 100% outside of family, um, things that I'm very proud of. When it comes to my personal, way more above my career, animals, shot, trophies, events, medals, all that's bullshit. The people that you have around you, I mean, for me to be able to, you know, to walk into a restaurant, Josh Smith is there and, I'm like, "Hey bro," and give him a hug and then turn around and Jocko's there or, honestly, some of my friends that aren't in the public light that I talk to every day, I'm just so lucky to have those friends. I mean, I have amazing people around me that I keep highly private, because I value like these are people that I'm going to be hunting with when
Mm-hmm.
I'm out of this industry. There's people that I'm going to hunt with where a lot of you'd be like, "Well, who the heck is that guy?" It's someone it's a family I really love and respect and have memories with, and I respect their privacy, and I am trying my best to not drag them in the middle of the chaos. And I'm very proud of that. I'm just super proud of that. And honestly, we're really proud of the team that we've built at Nock On. Like, we have amazing employees, and I just cherish those people. We're super lucky.
Awesome. Well, I know you got to get going. I appreciate you sharing that. And I would say, I know personally where I would stand if I was in your shoes there with Matthews as well. Seems to have panned out for you. You stuck to your guns. You did what you needed to do, and sold DVDs in the back of your Tacoma. But you made it work. And I love the community you're building and what you're doing for the archery community. I really appreciate, and that can't be
Yeah,
undervalued
no
at
hard
all.
feelings with Matthews too. We've all
Yeah.
we've all we've all hugged and we've all hugged and made up. And honestly, when if you've ever had a business, if you look back 10 years at like any decision you've made, you're probably just like, I would not do that now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think at that time, there was just the pecking order when a company is growing that fast. And honestly, I don't blame them. I was in a very unique position. I mean, I was competing, I was doing well. I was leaving the building more than anybody there, traveling and going to shoots and doing that. And I was getting to see some of my accounts, and yeah, it was a cool time. I was like living the best life as a competitor. I was internal at like one of the coolest, fastest growing companies. I got to see it all from behind the scenes, and we're growing and new offices being built, and like, deciding who goes where based on sales numbers, and just all that stuff. And yeah, but I definitely will never put my eggs all in one basket. And actually, funny enough, when I left Matthews, I remember going to an ATA show after I'd been at Hoyt like a year or 2 years, and Randy Walk sat down with me with another, one of his VPs, and they offered me international sales and marketing for Hoyt, um, because Jeff Howard had just went to Easton, and I just said no. And they're like, well, this is the salary and like this is the perks. And I literally just like, I remember like looking at Randy, and he was kind of looking at me like, uh, I didn't think it would be a no that fast, but I was just like, nope, not interested. And he was like, do you want to talk about what it entails? And I'm like, nope, it means that I'm going to be only working for you. And I did that. I regretted it. I'm, I will gladly take way less and have way more
Mhm.
backup support. So,
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to do a part 3 later because I actually want to get into that story.
oh,
So,
nice.
but
Yeah.
with that being said, I know you got to go. I appreciate your time, guys out there listening. If you haven't tuned into the Knock On podcast, highly recommend it. Again, if you have more in depth questions on what the transition was like, John Dudley's backstory, how he got to where he is now, it wasn't an overnight success, guys. It's taken decades to get where he is, and
What
so
podcast was that too? I forgot what it was called.
for the Knock On.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what that one was called.
Oh, I don't. I know the most recent one, or I guess second to most recent one, was your one about your transition
Yeah,
to Hoyt. I can't remember which one it was. I'll have to look it up and put it in the description.
it was called Turning the Page, my next chapter. It was podcast 355,
Perfect.
if people want to listen to it.
There you go. Awesome.
Thanks,
Yeah, you learn
Redbeard.
about how he could fit in a Tacoma. Um, all right. Well, thanks again, John,
All
and you
right.
guys have a fantastic day. And of course, get out, live your life, and love it.
Thanks, dude.